If you could turn back time just once, what age would you choose? Your 30s, when energy was endless and everything felt possible. Your 40s, when career and family were running at full speed. Here's a different suggestion. What about going back to 65? That quiet turning point, when success and failure have both left their marks, when your children are mostly grown, and when you first begin to sense that it might be time to let go of a few things. Your body can still move, your mind is still sharp, and it's not too late to change course. Over the past several years, researchers and retirement counselors have been asking the same question to people over 80. If you could send one message back to your 65-year-old self, what would you say? The answers were remarkably similar. Not about money, not about career, but about the things they wish they had done differently while they still could. Today, we're going to share 7 of those confessions. 7 regrets that came up again and again from people who lived long enough to see exactly where things went wrong. This isn't a lecture. Think of it as a letter written by someone who already walked the road you're on and sent back to save you a few painful lessons. If you're in your 50s or 60s right now, stay until the end, because these 7 confessions may be the most honest advice you'll ever hear. Let's begin with the one regret that came up first, almost every single time. Confession number 1, I should have taken care of my body first. I kept telling myself I was fine. A little pain here, a little stiffness there. Everyone my age has that, right? So I put off the doctor, I skipped the walks, I told myself, money first, body later. That's what an 82-year-old man told a retirement counselor during a recorded interview. And then he said this: one morning, my knee just gave out on a staircase. Not a fall, just a collapse. Like my body finally handed me the bill for 40 years of neglect. Here's what most people don't realize. When you're young, your body forgives everything. Skip sleep, eat poorly, sit for hours, it recovers. But after 65, the body stops forgiving. It starts collecting. A joint that aches today becomes a joint that doesn't bend in 5 years. A back you ignore now becomes a back that keeps you in bed by 75. And here's the part that stings the most. Money, if you lose it, you can earn it back. A business, if it fails, you can start again. But a knee, a spine, nerve damage, those don't come with a reset button. One woman in her late 70s put it simply: I spent my whole life earning money to live. I should have spent a little of that time keeping my body alive. If there's one thing every 80-year-old agrees on, it's this: the greatest asset in old age is not the number in your bank account. It's whether you can walk to the mailbox on your own legs, whether you can cook your own meal, whether you can travel, even a short trip, on your own 2 feet. And something interesting happens when you start taking care of your body. You walk and you notice the sunlight. The sunlight lifts your mood. And when your mood lifts, you want to see people again. The body is the engine. When it runs, everything else starts moving. That was the first confession. But the second one, many said it was even harder to admit. Confession number 2, I held on to the wrong people for too long. I used to think having a lot of people around meant I wasn't lonely. My phone had hundreds of contacts. I went to every gathering I was invited to. But I'll tell you this, some of the loneliest nights of my life came right after being in a room full of people. That's from a 79-year-old woman who spent decades maintaining relationships that quietly drained her. People who only talked about themselves. People who made subtle jabs disguised as jokes. People who never once asked, "How are you? Really?" She stayed because she told herself, at this age, cutting people off just makes you more alone. But here's what she discovered. Too late, she says. It's not the number of people that keeps loneliness away. It's having even one person who makes your heart feel lighter. Oxford University's research confirms this. Out of roughly 150 people we know, only about 15 are close. And the ones who truly matter in a crisis? Usually 5 or fewer. One retired manager shared this story. When he was hospitalized, he sent messages to over 400 contacts. 3 people visited. 3. He said, "That hospital room taught me more about relationships than 60 years of living did." So here's what the 80-year-olds keep saying. Stop trying to add people. Start finding the courage to subtract. Keep the ones who make your heart feel light. Let the rest drift, gently, without guilt. The strange thing is, when you do, you don't become lonelier. You become freer. Now, there's one relationship that almost no one thinks to fix, until it's too late. Confession number 3, I forgot to meet my spouse again. We lived together for 50 years, but somewhere along the way, she stopped being a person to me. She became a routine. That's from a man who is now 81. He described their daily conversation like this. Morning. Did you take your medicine? Afternoon. Did you eat? Evening. Turn off the lights. That was it. Day after day, year after year. He didn't know why she smiled. He didn't know why she sometimes cried quietly in the kitchen. He never thought to ask. Then one day, at the hospital, the doctor called her name. She turned and looked at him with no recognition. Dementia. That's when it hit me, he said. I had already disappeared from her memory a long time ago. Not because of the disease, because I was never really there. If he could go back to 65, he said, he would set one day a month, just one, as a date. Sit in a cafe, order coffee, and ask, "How are you feeling these days? Is there anything I can do better?" That small conversation, he believes, could have been the bridge that held everything together. A couple doesn't grow old, a couple ripens, and like all things that ripen, it takes attention, warmth, time. But even the people who got this part right, even the ones who took care of their marriage, many of them still carry one deep regret about their children. Confession number 4. I lived my children's lives for them. Parents are strange creatures. It doesn't matter if your child is 30, 40, or even 50. Somewhere deep inside, you're still thinking, they still need me. So you worry about their mortgage. You stress over their job. You quietly move money around so they don't struggle. Some parents say, if I don't help them, who will? And that feeling, it's not wrong. But one 80-year-old friend put it in a way that stopped everyone in the room. I wasn't helping my children live their lives. I was rehearsing their lives for them. Think about that for a moment. Children learn by falling. They grow by making mistakes. But when a parent clears every obstacle in advance, the child never learns to walk on their own. And here's the part no one expects. When the parent finally steps back, the child doesn't collapse. They step forward, often 2 steps at a time. The greatest gift you can give your children in old age is not a bigger inheritance. It's the belief that they can survive without you. That was the 4th confession, and it leads directly into something that many people only recognize in their 70s, a quiet crisis that has nothing to do with money or family. It's about the mind. Confession number 5. I stopped learning and my mind grew old. I was 72 when I realized I couldn't find the bus schedule on my phone. My grandson had always done it for me. That day, standing at the bus stop, staring at a screen I didn't understand, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Shame. That story comes from one of the most honest interviews in the collection, and it points to something researchers have been warning about for years. The real danger of aging isn't the body slowing down. It's the motivation disappearing. A leading geriatric psychiatrist who spent over 30 years studying elderly patients identified this as the single most dangerous factor in aging. Not disease, not injury. The loss of motivation. Here's why. The brain's frontal lobe, the part responsible for creativity, empathy, curiosity, and the ability to handle new situations, begins declining as early as your 40s. By your 70s, if you're not actively using it, the decline accelerates sharply. And when that frontal lobe goes quiet, everything follows. You lose interest in going out. Meeting people feels like effort. Even hobbies you once loved feel pointless. The prescription? Not solitary study, not reading alone in a quiet room. Surprisingly, research shows that input, reading, memorizing, does far less for the frontal lobe than output. Talking, debating, sharing opinions, even posting your thoughts on a blog or social media activates the frontal lobe more than hours of silent reading. And here's a striking real-world example. Nagano Prefecture in Japan has recorded one of the highest life expectancies in the country, repeatedly ranking #1. Researchers tried to explain it. The mountain terrain, the insect-eating tradition, the diet. But when the data was examined closely, the strongest correlation wasn't food or geography. It was employment. Nagano's elderly had the highest workforce participation rate in Japan, 41.6% for men, 21.6% for women. People who kept working, in any capacity, stayed sharper, moved more, and lived longer. The message is clear. Don't retire from life. Retire from your job if you must, but replace it immediately with volunteering, a small project, a class, a community role. Anything that makes you use your brain and move your body. Because the moment you stop, the clock speeds up. One doctor said it bluntly. I've seen patients lose more function in 1 month of doing nothing after retirement than in 5 years of working. Confession number 6, I kept saying someday, and sealed my heart shut. Someday I'll travel the country. Someday I'll take my wife on that trip. Someday I'll say what I really feel. How many of us live inside that word, someday? One man said this. After my wife passed, I drove past the hotel we'd always talked about visiting. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. Then I drove home, because there was no one to walk in with. Someday is the most dangerous word in the aging vocabulary because it almost never comes. And there's a biological reason why we keep postponing. As we age, serotonin levels decline. That's the brain chemical tied to motivation, happiness, and the ability to take action. When serotonin drops, even things you want to do start feeling like too much effort. The good news? 2 of the simplest boosters are free. Sunlight. Just 15 to 30 minutes of daylight exposure triggers serotonin production. And eating foods you genuinely enjoy, especially protein-rich ones, provides the raw material your brain needs to manufacture it. But someday doesn't only kill plans, it also kills honesty. Many elderly people admitted they spent decades holding in their emotions, grievances they never voiced, gratitude they never expressed, apologies they kept rehearsing in their heads but never delivered. One woman said, I held a grudge against my sister for 30 years. She died last spring. Now I carry 2 burdens, the original hurt and the fact that I never told her I'd forgiven her. Resentment doesn't hold the other person, it holds you. If there's something to say it now. If there's someone to forgive, start today. If there's a trip to take, book it this week. Not because time is running out, but because someday has never once kept its promise. And that brings us to the final confession. The one most people push away the longest. The one that, once accepted, changes everything. Confession number 7. I thought about death too late. We don't like talking about death. It feels heavy, unlucky even. So we push it to the back of the shelf and tell ourselves, not yet. I'll think about that later. One 80-year-old said, at my age, funerals have become the most common place I see old friends. He was the same. At 65, He hadn't thought about advance directives. He hadn't discussed his funeral wishes. He hadn't organized his finances for the people he'd leave behind. He told himself, there's still time. Then, sitting in a hospital waiting room one afternoon, a thought hit him. If I lose consciousness tomorrow, who will make the decisions? Do I want to be kept alive on machines? Or do I want to go quietly, naturally? Will my things become a burden to my family? A geriatric specialist who studied aging for 3 decades describes it this way. Your 70s are the last window to fight aging, to build habits, stay active, keep the mind sharp. But your 80s, that's when the fight ends and acceptance begins. Not with defeat, with grace. The people who prepared, who wrote a will, who organized their wishes, who talked openly with their families, were not more afraid. They were calmer, because they had already done the editing, and the rest of their days could simply be lived. Death is the final edit of your life, one woman said, and that edit should be done by you, not by someone else. Thinking about death doesn't mean giving up on life. It means seeing life more clearly. The person who accepts that this road has an end is the person who walks each remaining mile with more care, more warmth, and more presence. 7 confessions, 7 things that 80-year-olds wish they had known at 65. Take care of your body, it's the last house you'll ever live in. Sort your people, depth over numbers. Meet your spouse again before the chance disappears. Let your children fall so they can learn to stand. Never stop learning. Your brain needs output, not just input. Stop saying someday and unseal your heart and prepare for the end so you can live the middle with clarity. Before we close, there's one more story worth sharing. A philosophy professor, well into his 90s, was once asked in an interview, "What is your biggest regret?" He paused for a long time. Then he said, "When I retired at 65, I thought I was done. I sat down. I rested. I told myself I had earned it. And for nearly 3 years, I did nothing. That was the most wasted time of my entire life." He went on to say, "It wasn't until I picked up a pen again, not for work, but for myself, that I realized retirement wasn't the end of the road. It was the beginning of a road I had never walked before." He spent the next 30 years writing, teaching, and connecting with people, well past the age of 100, not because he had to, but because he chose to. The Roman philosopher Seneca wrote 2,000 years ago, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it." He also said, "Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested." Most of us hear those words and nod, but how many of us actually live by them? One of the 80-year-olds we spoke about today left behind a short note. Not a will, not a financial document, just a folded piece of paper tucked inside a book on his nightstand. It read, "I wasted too many mornings waiting for the perfect day. The perfect day was every day I woke up and didn't realize it." His wife found it after he passed. She said she read it every morning now, with her coffee, by the window, in the chair he used to sit in. You don't need to change everything at once. You don't need a grand plan. Start with one thing, a 30-minute walk, a phone call to someone you've been meaning to reach, a single line in a journal, a conversation with your spouse that goes beyond "did you eat?" One small act, today, not tomorrow, not someday, today, because that's how the next 10 years begin, with one honest step taken right now. The Swedish-born author Bronnie Ware spent years caring for people in the final weeks of their lives. In her book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, she wrote this: "When people realize that their life is almost over and look back clearly on it, it is easy to see how many dreams have gone unfulfilled." And the number one regret she heard, more than any other? "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Not more money, not a bigger house, not a better career. Just the courage to live honestly. Remember, no one gets to live life twice, but the moment you truly understand that, something shifts inside you. A quiet click, a door opening that you didn't know was there. That shift, that's your second life beginning. And here's the beautiful part. You're not hearing this at 80, looking back with regret. You're hearing it now, while your legs still work, while your mind is still clear, while the people you love are still within reach. That means you received this letter early. What you do with it, that's entirely up to you. If this story reached your heart today, share it with someone over 50 who might need to hear it. Leave a comment telling us which confession hit you the hardest. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and hit the bell so we can keep having these conversations together. Your one sentence in the comments might change someone else's tomorrow. Thank you for being here, and remember, today is the youngest day of the rest of your life.